All Indiana Politics is your premier source for Indiana politics, focusing on issues that matter to you.
I still want us to be the best in the Midwest.
We can't afford another lockdown.
Give the citizens of this country the relief they need.
Education in the state of Indiana remains priority number one.
In-depth, nonpartisan coverage.
We don't know exactly where the economy will be in January.
People are worried with good reason.
Exclusive interviews with Indiana's political leaders.
We have the resources here in the state of Indiana to care for those who are in need.
Expert analysis on critical legislation.
We need to reform those laws.
This recovery is going to take some time.
We've got to anticipate that there'll be a budget shortfall.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome to another edition of All Indiana Politics. I'm Phil Sanchez. Another major development in the governor's race. Former Indiana Secretary of Commerce Brad Chambers has entered the Republican primary for the state's top job. We've been telling you that he has the support of a number of top Indiana Republicans, including the now outgoing state party chair. Chambers is the fifth major Republican to file. He joins fellow IEDC alum Eric Doden, Senator Mike Braun, Lieutenant Governor Suzanne Crouch, and former Attorney General Curtis Hill. Meanwhile, former Vice President and Indiana Governor Mike Pence is doubling down on his criticism of both former President Donald Trump and the justice system. This follows the latest indictment of Trump out of Georgia. He talked about the indictment during a speech to Republican state lawmakers from across the country in Indianapolis. He also revealed what he wants to return some federal government functions to the states. Look.
Frankly, after years of revelations of politicization at the highest levels of our justice system in this country, the years in our administration where we learned of political activities by members of the FBI pursuing the Mueller investigation, the Russia hoax, the ongoing pursuit of the former president, and conservatives and pro-lifers while seeming to look the other way on Hillary Clinton, Hunter Biden, and the Biden family. This undermined public confidence in equal treatment under the law. And now this week comes another indictment regarding the former president's conduct in the days leading up to the close of our administration. I've said many times I had hoped the judgment about those days would be left to the American people and to history. But such is not the case. But in these times, I want to say I think it's important that we hew to first principles and that we tell the truth to the American people. The first principles are these: no one is above the law. And the president and all those implicated are entitled to the presumption of innocence that every American enjoys. But secondly, despite what the former president and his allies have said for now more than 2.5 years, and continue to insist to this very hour, the Georgia election was not stolen, and I had no right to overturn the election on January 6th. It's a hard truth. My friend Governor Brian Kemp said it well yesterday. He said, for nearly 3 years, anyone with evidence of fraud has failed to come forward to provide evidence in a court of law regarding the Georgia elections. So today I came to announce a very simple plan to restore federalism in America. It's just a 5-point plan. I'll breeze through it quickly, and then I'd love to take any questions, Mr. Speaker, that people might have. Number one, we will go to work on day one to eliminate the Federal Department of Education and return all those resources to the states for educational choice and reform. Number two, on housing, highways, and welfare, we're going to return funding in block grants to the states, no strings attached. Three, we're going to repeal all Obamacare mandates and give states the power to implement health care assistance programs to the benefit of their people to reduce the cost of health insurance. And number four, the federal government owns roughly 640 million acres of land in this country. That's 28% of the continental United States. Now, I believe that we can preserve our national treasures, cherish our great heritage in our national parks, but I believe the time has come for the United States government to return a portion of these lands back to the states and the American people for development, innovation, and reform. Fifth, we will provide, under any administration I lead, that any regulation that imposes unfunded mandates on the states will be prohibited from day one. Under my administration, if Washington calls the tune, Washington will pay the bill. No more orders down to the states and let you all figure out how to pay for it.
My question, sir, is what would your administration do, and how can the states work with you to counter those who have tried to undermine the integrity and American faith in our electoral system? What can we do to work together to improve that?
Well, I've given that a lot of thought, and let me just say, I want to give a round of applause to the Republican-led states that have passed strong election integrity reforms in the days since that election in 2020. I mean, states around the country, you all have done an incredible job. Look, we've got to restore public confidence in our elections, but what we've got to do, we got to resist the temptation of Washington getting involved in it. Right. So for me, it would be resources, not red tape. I would be very open. I would be very open to working with the Congress as president to say, how could we provide resources for modernization for states in election systems, to improve systems, improve public confidence, but then take 3 steps back.
All right, coming up, another Republican presidential candidate visits the Hoosier State, why he's trying to break into the upcoming debate in Milwaukee. Welcome back. A new face might soon join the field on the debate stage in Milwaukee next week. Texas businessman and pastor Ryan Binkley is trying to meet the donor and polling threshold to qualify. He stopped by our studios during a visit to the Hoosier State.
Well, I'm CEO of Generational Group. I co-founded this business 20 years ago. It's a merger and acquisition firm, investment banking. Now we do a number of things, growth management, wealth management. We have a software engineering firm, a part of it as well. So overall, about 400 employees across the nation. I'm also a pastor. My wife and I have been in ministry really our whole life, but we actually started a church 10 years ago. And this word came to my heart to run for president about 8 years ago, and I've been praying about it. And now we have launched our campaign about 3 months ago. And our message is that America is in desperate need of an economic revival and a heartfelt spiritual revival. You know, we're so broken in both of these areas, financially, culturally, relationally, so divided. In fact, we've never been this divided as we are in my lifetime. I'm 55 years old, and if we don't come together to solve some of our biggest problems, we're going to be in a lot of trouble, more so than we are now, and that's why I'm running for the next generation.
Are you surprised at how well you've done so far?
Well, it has been a little bit slower than we thought in some ways, but it's started to pick up momentum. So we spent, 2 months on the trail, just now getting our word out there. We've been to 62 counties in Iowa, and then all of a sudden the last month it's really started to pick up. So, for instance, donors. It took us 2 months to get 2,000 donors. Now we've been getting 2,000 a day for 2 weeks now, so we're probably going to hit the number that we have, maybe by today or tomorrow, the 40,000 number. And now we're starting to get more media attention. So we've been on some national media a couple times last week. We're going to be on that again this week. And so it's exciting that people are hearing our message more, that there's a true message we have for balancing our budget. You know, our nation is so broke, so we just launched a 7-year economic rescue plan. We haven't balanced our budget in over 30 years. It's been that long since we've had a president speak to it, I think Ronald Reagan. And so we're talking about key issues that matter.
Okay, so why do you think that's resonated so far with some of the voters?
You know, I think a lot of people in the Republican Party were everywhere. So a lot of our party is just kind of upset at what's happened in the past, a little bit about election or a little bit about what's happening to Trump right now. But a good chunk of the party, over half, seems to be like, Ryan, let's move forward. What does it mean to move forward? And how do we honor some of the things Trump did, but also carry a message that connects to people broader? You know, we only won 46% of the vote in the last 2 general elections, President Trump did. We lost 46 of the top 50 cities by population. So there's a huge group of people that we're not connecting to. And my message is, how can we be economically prudent with compassion, but also start doing some job training, engaging young adults, college students in urban America, an alternative, I would say, to socialism, and how can we engage more so we can win some of these big cities and actually engage the entire party to broaden our tent.
You brought up his name twice, so I want to ask you
Sure.
about the former president. Your thoughts on him and the latest indictment that just came out this week?
Yeah, these are
Four now. In the past
absolutely.
year.
So honestly, a lot of these are political. Just seeing the vast number of them come down the way they did, and particularly with the Durham report, drops in May, admits that they are political a little bit or a little bit biased, and they didn't follow protocol. Then boom, all these hit. I think that most of them should be dropped. If all this recent one, I would say this, a little bit more problematic because it's in the state of Georgia, and it can't be pardoned, I don't think, from what I've read. So that main one may be a little bit more problematic. That said, they appear to be political, but this one may have a little bit more different approach to it.
If you do become the candidate, if you do become the president of the United States, and Trump is charged and winds up being found guilty, would you pardon him in the other cases?
Well, likely so in the other ones. The other ones don't seem to have a lot of teeth in it to me. They do have some things. I mean, obviously there were some judgments made that I would have made differently, but likely so for sure on the ones that I've seen. The Georgia case, again, I don't think you can pardon on the Georgia case.
Where do you see yourself 2 months from now?
Wow. We see ourselves growing in the polls, moving beyond Iowa. Obviously, we're starting our inroad into New Hampshire, and then we'll start going to South Carolina and some of the other early states. We are gaining momentum a little bit in our message because we're starting to broaden it more and we're getting more national attention. Our message is about really getting this financial track on track for the next generation. Right now, we are about to leave the next generation, the next 8 years. We're going to be $50 trillion in debt. We're spending 8% of our budget right now on interest payments that we don't have the money for. And in about 8 years, it's going to be 12 to 14%. So we're communicating. We've got to get this ready now. Otherwise, we're going to be known as the generation, I think, that prospered the most but sacrificed the least. So we have to fix that. Our message is about healthcare also. We've had 40% higher inflation in healthcare in the last 20 years. And so it's broken. So I have a plan to actually bring competition, price transparency back into healthcare, put patients back in charge. And so we're talking about things that meet people's pocketbooks. Inflation is hitting everybody right now on average $709 more a month. And that's after-tax money than it did just 2 years ago. So we have to rein this in, but the only way to do it is through spending and wise cuts. And then we're trying to culturally reach out to urban America and college students. The Republicans, we've just not done a good job of reaching out to urban America. I really think it's time for our message to resonate, and our message should resonate regardless of your income strata, regardless of your race, regardless of your age. How do we relevant? And that's what we're doing. We're putting together job programs, a volunteer movement to take care of it all the more.
Further that a little bit, if you can. How does Ryan Binkley reach out to the inner city?
Absolutely. So right now, if you're struggling financially, a message of free health care, free tuition, free anything is actually very compelling. So what's our alternative? If I believe in fiscal stewardship and I believe in independence and freedom and not too big of government, what does that mean? Well, I got to start teaching people if they're going to come out of poverty, what are we going to show them? I actually think we're going to have to start community centers, and these are not just public, these aren't publicly run, these are going to be privately run. We're engaging the community, saying, it's time to own our cities. Let's own it, and let's invest in after-school programs and teach people how to have a trade. Let's get back to trade training. 20, 30 years ago, we used to have this a lot more in the United States than we do now. We need to teach young people how to be a plumber, electrician, a carpenter, a mason, computer technology. So many jobs you don't have to have a 4-year degree for. We need to take young people on a track. Either you're going to college or you're starting a career. And we need to have a career that they can actually have a living wage with. There's so many. And after that, we need to start teaching young kids how to read, write, and do math. Only 1 out of 6 kids in urban America, particularly minorities, are reading at the 8th grade reading level. 6 out of 10 in the suburbs. So I want to start a volunteer movement with college students saying, give me 5 hours a week. Let's invest in 3rd graders through the 5th graders, teaching them how to read, write, and do math. Let's engage the community. This is the culture that we need to revive in America.
All right, coming up, Indiana's best political team assesses Brad Chambers' chances in the governor's race and reacts to the latest Trump indictment. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome in 2 members of Indiana's best political team, Republican Tom John, and filling in for Kip 2 this week is Democrat strategist Lindsay Hawk, good to see you both. Let's get right to two big developments in the governor's race. On Thursday, former Indiana Secretary of Commerce Brad Chambers announced that he's running for governor. Then late on Friday afternoon, Indiana Republican Party Chair Kyle Hupfer stepped down. We've been told that Hupfer will run Chambers' campaign. Tom, we'll begin with you this week. Does this suggest that maybe Chambers is the choice of the Republican establishment, especially Governor Eric Holcomb?
I can't speak for Eric Holcomb or Kyle, but obviously the rumors have been out there that Kyle will be going running or heavily involved with Brad's campaign. Obviously, they're people who've worked together closely over the years, respected people. As to what the establishment is, that's an open question that we talk about all the time, nationally and otherwise. I think Brad is somebody who has been a tremendous leader at the Secretary of Commerce, and he's somebody who has a great business history and somebody who's contributed a lot to the state and will contribute to the gubernatorial debate.
Lindsay, does this maybe suggest that party insiders are making an end run around what voters maybe want?
Oh, that suggests that that doesn't happen anyway, and I think that's probably already been happening for quite a while. But I do think it's interesting, the timing. Of course, this is one of the best kept secrets in Indianapolis right now, that Kyle would head over to Chambers' campaign. So I'm eager to see what it means. I am very hopeful that he is more, that former Secretary Chambers is more forthcoming with information about his priorities than he was at the IEDC.
Lindsay, Chambers has a history of donating to both Democrats and Republicans, as you very well know, compared to the other Republicans in the race. So how serious of a threat could he pose in November?
Oh, I think he can pose a very serious threat. I think the clown car of the Republican primary for the gubernatorial race next year is getting more crowded as we go. But I will tell you that it's, while some may jostle with some jokes about how many people are in this race, there are serious folks in this race with serious solutions to problems that should be vetted, and I'm eager to see who ends up weighing out. Of course, that doesn't always happen in primaries, so we'll see what happens. But so far, I'm not enthused by any of the candidates. Obviously, wouldn't be a surprise coming from me, a Democrat. But it is an interesting theory to watch out happen in front of us.
Tom, does that donation history hurt Chambers in the primary?
It's something that'll obviously be a matter of discussion, but I mean, you look at President Trump had given the Democrats, there are a lot of people who've done those sorts of things every time. Brad was a businessman, and businessmen work with a lot of different people and cross the aisle. So I think that at the end of the day, we'll see what happens. It'll be a matter of discussion, but there's lots of those in a primary, particularly their family discussions that hopefully focus on policies in the future of the state.
Tom, you brought up the former president, so let's turn to the indictment out of Georgia now, not only of former President Donald Trump, but also the legal team that led his efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Tom, this is arguably the most extensive indictment against Trump, as you know. How big of a threat does this pose to him, both politically and legally?
Politically, it seems none of these indictments have frankly affected him in the primary. I think they continue to hurt him in the general. I think they'll continue to hurt him in the general, and you see that in some of the polling. But as far as legally, this does seem the most comprehensive, the one that brings in the most pieces and under a statute that is the most farthest reaching. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, because there are a lot of pieces and a lot of new pieces, I think, to this indictment you haven't seen other places.
Lindsay, your thoughts?
Well, this indictment is indeed troubling for the former president, and it is very interesting from simply a legal, I won't say scholar, because I am not an attorney, but I do work in the field. So it's interesting from a commentator's standpoint to simply see how his legal team is attempting to wrangle him. The former president has a serious PR issue in that he likes to speak his mind at any time of the day, and that's a very significant significant problem for his legal team. So you saw some developments today, even where he canceled his forthcoming press conference. He's decided to shove all of that information that he was supposedly going to be revealing into filings within his case. So I am rejecting completely the commentary that this is the weaponization of the Justice Department, and I am eager to see what happens. And I am not surprised that he's slated for the hearing to be in 2026. That doesn't surprise me at all. When you've got something to hide, you run, and delaying and obstructing is all he's doing now.
Well, we will all be watching. Tom, Lindsay, thank you so much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you, and we will be right back.
Take All Indiana Politics on the go with you. Download our podcast now. Part of the All Indiana Podcast Network and allindianapodcastnetwork.com.
And thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics this week. We'll be back here, of course, next Sunday morning at 9:30. You can also find our brand new All Indiana Politics podcast. It's part of the All Indiana Podcast Network over at wishtv.com. Have a great rest of your weekend.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Watch All Indiana Politics live Sunday mornings at 9:30 on Wish TV and at wishtv.com. Subscribe to this podcast and listen weekly here on the All Indiana Podcast Network. And be sure to discover even more great podcasts at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.